On all of this, I do want to bring in the CEO of the Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman, back to Live Now from Fox. And as always, Alex, we appreciate you joining us.
Stephanie, thanks for having me.
So we were hearing from Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu saying that he supports President Trump's vow to target Iran's power plants if Iran does not open the Strait of Hormuz within the next 48 hours without threat. When it comes to the support from Israel and IDF, what might that look like?
Well, I think that you might see Israel actually targeting the facilities, Israel providing intelligence on those facilities. Israel would be in favor of hitting the power plants because that could further destabilize the regime, and it could push Iranian citizens out into the streets to protest against their government.
All of this, Alex, comes as Iran's latest attack against Israel has resulted in dozens of civilians being injured. When it comes to Iran's capabilities of penetrating Israel's defenses, what do these latest attacks signify, if anything?
Well, we've seen a change in the strategy since the very beginning of the war. Iran sending more and more cluster munitions, which are much more difficult to intercept by Israel's multi-layered defense. Similarly, we saw last night that they targeted the city of Arad, which is a very isolated city. It's not really part of the population centers around Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, nothing really around it. And therefore, it's an area that's not very well protected. Perhaps they're now shifting their strategy to target areas that might not have the same level of dynamic protection because it only takes really one missile to get through that protection.
When it comes to just how long Iran can keep up these retaliations, does these latest series of attacks give you any indication in terms of their weapons supply or their tactics that they're able to execute?
Well, Israel knew that Iran was sitting on at least 1,500 ballistic missiles, and by all accounts, they may have fired that number against Israel as well as against other countries in the Gulf, and even as far away now we see as Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. What was believed to be a greater bottleneck in terms of the ballistic missiles was the launchers. Iran was believed to have maybe 150 to 200 launchers, and every time a launcher is being fired, the IDF and the United States trying to target those launchers so they wouldn't be able to be used again. But clearly we're seeing that Iran is firing more and more missiles at Israel, at other countries in the region. So that could either mean that they're running out of gas and therefore they're firing whatever they can as fast as they can, or it could mean that the supplies that Iran has, both in terms of the number of missiles and in terms of the ballistic missile launchers, is greater than originally anticipated.
Right now, we have still yet to see or even hear the voice of Iran's newly elected supreme leader. When it comes to who is actually in charge and making these decisions, what can you share with us about that?
Well, I think that's been a big question, and President Trump stated in many of his comments, we don't know who we're talking to. We don't know who's making the decisions. It's believed that Iran has set into motion a predetermined action plans. What would happen if the official chain of command from the top would be broken. So right now, it's believed that you have a lot of independent cells that may be firing ballistic missiles with launchers they have, and they have their orders already what to do if there's no leader in charge, if there's no chain of command. And so you might not be dealing with anybody at the top. You might have to deal with independent cells all across the country that are able to fire ballistic missiles.
The war is now entering the fourth week. When it comes to where we all stand in this war, where do you see the timeline? Where do you see that goalpost that the U.S. is looking to reach, that Israel wants to accomplish?
In the very beginning of the war, we heard that this could be maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We just recently heard this week from an IDF spokesperson that Israel was halfway through reaching the targets. And as you mentioned, we're already like entering now soon into week number 4 here. And if they're halfway done, that could mean this could go on for several more weeks. I think a lot of Israelis were hoping that this would be over by the Passover holiday, which is set to start in just a week and a half. But most Israelis here have now come to the conclusion that Israel is going to be continuing to fight this battle and ducking in and out of shelters to avoid Iranian ballistic missiles, even through the week-long Passover holiday.
And Alex, speaking of Passover, what are the concerns, if any, when it comes to Iran particularly focusing on the Holy Week in order to carry out some of the strikes?
Well, I mean, we've seen Iran and its terror proxies have zero regard whatsoever for holy times and also holy places. Remember, this war began on October 7th on a Jewish holy day. Not only was it the Sabbath, it was also the holiday of Simchat Torah, which is considered to be one of the most important Jewish holidays. But we've also seen Iran firing missiles that have landed very close to very sensitive holy sites. A ballistic missile crashed in the old city just on Friday that was about 300 yards away from the Western Wall Plaza, from the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and only about 400 yards away from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And earlier in the week, we had seen fragments, shrapnel of a ballistic missile that actually landed on the roof of one of the buildings that was part of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre compound.
All right, Alex Traiman, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me.
And we are going to continue to follow.